Today was the 8th round at Norway Chess Classical 2023, and it was one of the most amazing games which Gukesh played today with white against Aryan Tari. So let's check that out. D4, he starts with D4, Knight F6, Bishop F4, and there it is, London system, D5, E3, and maybe Aryan did not expect this from Gukesh. He went G6, and Gukesh did think a little bit over here because G6 was also maybe not something he expected from Aryan. Knight F3, Bishop G7, C3, Castle, Knight BD2, B6 was played, and here Gukesh plays a very interesting move, that is h4. Very few games have been played with something like this, but very interesting idea there. Of course, you are not immediately threatening h5, you have the knight on f6 there, but if you remember the dragon structure, exactly, there is a hook on g6, so this is definitely intimidating. Oops, that was a mouse slip there. But h4 by Gukesh, and Aryan had to think for a bit. He goes c5. When the king is in the center, he's trying to make sure that the center is challenged. Gukesh goes with his knight to e5, and here Aryan develops his knight to d7. Well, maybe Aryan could think of bishop takes bishop a6, trying to exchange the light square bishop, but here Gukesh would have had some very interesting ideas. G4 would be one of them for sure. Well, if you try to give an exchange sack right now, it might be a little too early. After queen h5, you want to long castle, get your rook to h1, but black would have a very nice defensive move. Any guesses there? Well, queen e8 would be a beautiful move with the idea of f6 and challenging the queen. So that would not work. Just for a moment, if I must show you over here, after h5, knight h5, rook h5, g h5, queen h5, if you go a move like e6, then long castle, there you go. Rook h1 is a very strong idea with all these crazy tactics incoming, and this would be a massacre for black. Well, nothing of this sort happened. That's why Aryan simply developed his knight to d7, and Gukesh also develops bishop e2 with the idea of keeping h5 in mind, and black here has no point in going bishop b7 behind the d5 pawn. It would not mean anything at all because white is not intending any central break. So what should black do? Because if he takes here, now the point is d takes e5, and this knight cannot really jump to any of these squares. So that would be a big problem. If knight goes to d7, the knight could jump into f3 with all these ideas of queen d5 and h5. So it's not easy to make a move, developing move for black. Aryan goes h5, which is quite a strong move, and actually fixes this pawn here, also stops these h5 ideas which were quite annoying there. So a nice move by h5, asking Gukesh, what are you going to do now? So Gukesh decides to play knight c6. Well, he could have thought of knight f3, just simply solidifying his knight on e5 there, and if certain exchanges like these happen, then maybe with Gukesh's style he could go for g4 ideas, and that could be very interesting. But he decides to go knight c6, attacks the queen goes to e8, and here Gukesh completely has something else in mind. Well, that is very creative of him. He goes b4. Whoa, and that's the idea there. Going b5, securing the c6 spot for your knight. But what happened was, Aryan finds a very good move for black. Aryan was on his toes and he was alert, and can you find it? He goes knight g4. Quite a good move there. If Aryan would have taken your c takes b4, as you see, the c file opens up, b5 is coming, short castle later, and white would have a very pleasant position. So Aryan goes knight g4, and what happens for bishop takes g4, h takes g4, queen takes g4? Well, that's a big blunder because of knight e5, and there comes a disco and you lose a piece there on c6. So definitely not bishop takes g4. But what else? If a move like knight f3, maybe if that is what Gukesh would think of, then the knight jumps in with the ideas of knight e4, and definitely some trouble over here. So even this doesn't work. What else? If you go b5 trying to follow up your idea of b4, then a good move for black, which was the actual another idea of knight g4. Can you find it? Yes, that is right. e5 would be very very powerful over here for black, and the queen is very very dangerous. So the only way after knight g4 that Gukesh could continue was simply castling there and avoiding all these other issues. So he castles e5 by Aryan, and Gukesh here goes back with his bishop to g3. Now here, if Aryan tries to exchange, then Gukesh is happy. Any file opening is good for him. He's very happy with that. So that is not possible. If Aryan tries to, let's say, develop bishop b7, Aryan actually played the move queen e6, which may not be considered as the best idea there. But if a move like bishop b7, then Gukesh would have to be alert, because if he goes a move like b5, bishop takes c6, b takes c6, attacking this knight here, knight moves to f6, and then queen a4 would have been played, and this was playable for sure. But maybe for bishop b7, bishop g4 would be a stronger idea which Gukesh would have had. And after h takes g6, because if you take bishop takes c6 here, then bishop takes c6, then this bishop retreats and stays on a nice diagonal. So at g4, then knight e5, let's say a few exchanges happen here after queen takes c5, and important move here, first b takes c5, because if you take queen g4, then there is queen takes c3, and a little bit trouble there for white for sure. You might think some attacking chances there, but no, this bishop jumps in and attacks the queen. Not much time, queen takes b4 is also incoming. So that is the reason b takes c5 would be an important move if such a situation would arise. And now queen takes g4 would have made all the difference, because the knight would be stronger than the bishop, and yes, h5 is always in hand. So that all could be very very interesting. uh, but for Aryan, why this was important, and maybe this is also one of the reason he would have rejected, is after b takes c5, black to play, and he would have had a nice intermezzo over here. Yes, and that is queen h5. You attack this h4 pawn in between. If g3, then black is very happy with this diagonal, but white would have a lovely move, queen a4 over there, because if you take the pawn, c6 is quite strong and keeps the position in check, and if b takes c5 or something like that, then white still keeps attacking this bishop over here and can collect the pawn on c5, and the knight will be a blockader here on d4. Alright, so that was pretty deep there. That is the reason Aryan had to make this move bishop b7, but he plays queen e6, a slightly a weak move, but Gukesh plays b5, defends this knight there. Aryan now goes bishop b7, and here is the moment where it changed it all. White to play. Gukesh finds this move, a beautiful move there. Can you find it? Yes, that is the move c4. Suddenly the center is being challenged, and a question to black, because if d takes c4, what Gukesh's idea was to go d5, and there you go, this knight which came to c6 now showing its power. 97 check is a big fork to take care of. Also note that if you don't take, then the knight is jumping in the d6, and the queen is once again trapped because of knight e7 fork ideas there. So in general, c4 is a big question to black, how he is going to continue. A move like e takes d4 doesn't make a difference because c takes d5, anyway you land up your pawn over there. Well, and if black tries to go rook f8, trying to defend this, still c takes d5, queen takes d5, and white may not have knight e7, but what white will have is bishop c4, attacking the queen. Queen goes back, once again attacking the queen with knight e4. If the queen goes back, then yes, knight g5 would be possible. But why not to play something beautiful? Guys, white to play here. And there you go. Bishop f7, king f7, queen b3 check, king moves to f8, and knight g5 with two mating nets there. So that would be crushing. So for c4, what he played was only move for Aryan, and he goes bishop takes c6, finally getting this annoying knight out of the game. B takes c6, and here was the moment where black still needed to play queen takes c6 in order to stay in the game. This was a necessity, and the position which would have arisen would be after c takes d5 here. So this would be the moment where Aryan would still had to struggle to find the best move, because if you take queen takes d5, then there you lose the exchange. If you go queen c7, then there is knight c4 and a pin and rook c1 and all is coming. If you go queen f6, then you can simply take here, go queen b3, once again knight e4, e4, all these ideas in the air. If you would go queen d6, still there is d5 with the same ideas. So in general, black would have had to go queen b7. In spite of that, bishop f3, d6 ideas were very powerful for white. So this still would have helped him to be in the game, playable. But what he does with black Aryan is knight d f6. Of course, it's very scary in the center. Here, once again, Gukesh makes a move, unbelievable move. Can you find it? And have never really seen something like this. Very very rare scenario for sure. White to play, he goes e4, and there you go. Look at this, 6 pawns in the center. It's complete challenging sumo wrestling type feeling there. So e4 by Gukesh, and how come it is even possible to imagine such a move upcoming? So we do definitely know now that how difficult it was for knight f6 to find e4, and Gukesh plays this. Now if you make a move like this, simply c takes d5, and look at this pawn chain, crushing. If you move your queen, if you take the pawn on c6, then once again just simply you can capture here, and d takes e5, and these guys are just too strong. What else could have black done? Maybe d takes e4, another option, but then comes d5, and if the queen moves back, bishop takes g4, h takes g4 and a4, and maybe still this was the best possibility for black to continue playing, maybe a4 a5, with keeping something in the hand, some possibilities in the future. But he played knight takes e4, Aryan takes there. Now Gukesh takes c takes d5, because if knight takes e4, then this time after d5 queen c8, black would definitely get some counterplay. So Gukesh is absolutely right on his toes. He takes c takes d5, queen takes d5, knight goes to knight takes e4, queen takes e4, and d5. There you have the most powerful pawn chain there, and the passer pawns there. They have gone through all the challenges, and you can see this c6 pawn is beyond the c5 pawn. Knight goes back to f6. Exactly how, what do you do, how do you stop them? So knight f6, bishop f3, queen goes to f5 with the idea of winning the d5 pawn, but obviously Gukesh is not going to let them happen. d6 there, together they are strong. e4, bishop goes back to e2, knight comes to d5, and here Gukesh plays rook c1. Yes, it was possible to play, it was definitely possible to go c7, give an exchange sack, all of that would have worked, but rook c1 just keeps it all quite simple there. And Aryan still tries to find some complexities a counterplay. Knight b4 attacks the a2 pawn. Gukesh completely ignores the threat, goes c7, also threatens d7 with the support of the queen on d1. Now, if Aryan would have captured the a2 pawn, Gukesh could have moved the rook to c4 and threatened d7 for bishop d4, a lovely move which Gukesh would definitely have found. Can you guys find it? Queen d2 attacking the a2 knight. If knight goes to b4, then you can simply take and take the bishop on d4. So that would be amazing. But Aryan goes bishop d4, not allowing d7 so soon. Gukesh goes queen a4, reviving the idea of d7, and Aryan plays a6. Quite natural, you want to go b5 next move, so d7, b5, and once again a moment there. If you go, if can you find a move for Gukesh? White to play. Yes, if you go queen d1, then there is simply queen d7. You don't want to do that. Gukesh takes bishop takes b5, a takes b5, and no, definitely it's not for queen b5 because knight can go to d3. Both the squares are controlled with the queening squares. So even if you queen there, it's not going to be enough. The exchange of black definitely has a lot of counterplay there, and in fact black is better. But the move here is queen takes 8. So that was a lovely move. If you take with the rook, then queen, and this is simply materially winning. So he goes for queen takes 8. Aryan plays queen takes d7, gets rid of one of the pawns there. Queen takes e4, knight takes a2, and Gukesh brings his rook to e1. Now, if black says, let me also start pushing my pawn, something like this, and then Gukesh had queen b7, stopping the pawn to b3, c4, let's say, reviving the threat of b3, and here there would be a beautiful tactic incoming, guys. White to play. There you go, rook e7 attacks the queen, deflects it from the square. If queen takes, then there is queen e7, queen c, then there is c8 queen, and also you can see the disco there. If queen b7 or queen b7, and if rook c8, there is queen takes e7. So that would be a very nice tactic. So he goes bishop f6, controls the e7 square, but now the rook attacks the queen. The bishop comes back to d4, and here Gukesh finds a nice little move. Of course, many moves are winning, but he finds this queen c2 there, very alert. There is a pin down there. Queen c5 is also threat. Queen a2 is hanging. You cannot go knight c3 because of queen c3. If you go knight b4, then there is queen c5. So Aryan supports the knight with queen e6. And then Gukesh once again attacks the queen. Rook f1, queen goes to c4, queen c4, the queens get exchanged, and Gukesh attacks the rook on f8, rook c8. But once again, the final move by Gukesh, and a resignation incoming, guys. So bishop c5 was played by Gukesh, because if you take the bishop, then there is rook d8. So after bishop c5, Aryan resigned, and that was an amazing game by Gukesh. What a challenge in the center, what alertness, how much calculation, if so many takes here and there, and so many tactical possibilities, but he was extremely alert. This win was very, very important for him. He got 3 points in the standings. Today, Fabiano on 16, Nakamura 13.5, and you can see Gukesh jumped to 13 points after adding up these 3 points. Also, with this win, very importantly, Gukesh becomes world number 13. That is huge. He becomes world number 13. Cut. Gukesh also, with this win, Gukesh becomes world number 13 with 2743.7. That was his rating. That is his rating right now. So he played an amazing game, and tomorrow is the last round of Norway Chess Classical 2023. He's going to play with So Wesley with black pieces. Can Gukesh beat Wesley? What's going to happen? tune in at 8:30 tomorrow night. All right, there. Uh, bye bye. All right, there. That was an amazing game of Gukesh and amazing tactics for you guys. So tune in tomorrow.